Hey guys, in today's video we're going to talk about Jean-Claude Van Damme. If you're like me, you can never get enough Van damage. I also can never get enough vein damage, by the way. Van Damme has always been an inspiration to me, and I'm sure many of you as well. He's a martial arts legend, an action icon, the muscles from Brussels, and that's going to be more the focus on this video, his muscles. He's got a physique that men want, that women want too, but in a different way. But I'm pretty sure all other classifications of people, come to think of it, we gotta be inclusive these days, to people like Greg Doucette, for example.
I'm a circle.
Now, one thing that a lot of people speculate is, did he build his physique naturally?
Well, detective, what do you say?
How did you know?
Natty or Not videos are not typically something I do. That's more of like a Greg Doucette or a more plates, more dates thing. But they're usually doing those videos on Instagram models. But covering an actual legend like Jean-Claude Van Damme, that'd be way more suited for my channel anyway. By the way, if you're a Jean-Claude Van Damme fan, you gotta subscribe to this channel because I'm gonna keep giving you the best Van Damme content out there. Outside of, you know, his channel that he runs, of course. Going back to more plates, more dates real quick, he kind of sort of did a Natty or Not video on Van Damme. I'll give you my thoughts on his video, and I'll also link his in the description below if you want to check out his full video. Now, one thing I want to point out that I think helps lend some credibility to my video is my own experience. So I've been working out naturally, consistently for over 25 years now. Throughout that time, I've obviously met, known, and talked to a lot of people in the different gyms I worked out. Some of those guys natural, some of them enhanced. So I'm not naive, nor do I lack experience when it comes to this kind of topic. Despite what some people may have commented on my Rocky 3 video. It's a really good video, by the way. I'll link that in the description below too. You should check it out if you haven't seen it yet. But long story short, I've been around the gym block more than a few times. So I'll tie in some of my experiences, which will kind of give this video a unique perspective. Now, we're obviously not going to know definitively what the answer is, but we're going to speculate in an educated manner. And I'll give you reasons why on both sides of the debate why Van Damme might have been natural this whole time, or maybe he wasn't. And then wrap it all up with my final verdicts. So buckle in and let's talk about this amazing man with the amazing body in the amazing jacket. We're going to talk about Van Damme's physique throughout the years, but I'm going to focus a little more on Bloodsport because that's definitely a physique that many people specifically have been inspired and motivated by. Definitely one of the more impressive ones he's displayed in film. Bloodsport was released in 1988, however, it did sit on shelves for a year or two prior to its release, so Van Damme would have been 26 or 27 when he filmed it. Let's break down the stats first. I'm going to say realistically Van Damme's probably 5'9". Some of you guys might think a little shorter, some perhaps taller, but that's a very fair ballpark. He claimed he weighed 85 kilos in that film. That's roughly 185 pounds or so, which looks about right when I look at him. He's pretty lean in this film. He's got good muscle separation. Body fat percentage wise, I'd say 9%. He looks about in the ballpark of what Greg Doucette and Kino Body looked in a recent video they did together while getting tested on a DEXA scan.
My laser eye vision. Okay, turn around to the back. I'd say you're probably close to 8% anyway.
What we got?
9.5.
9 point. Where does it say?
That's the same as the skin fold caliper had, man.
Okay, wow.
So we kind of have to answer two questions here. One, is Van Damme's body achievable naturally? And two, did he actually achieve it himself naturally? The first question is obviously going to be much easier to answer. There are calculators out there that can do a pretty good job at determining your natural muscle building potential. So one of them that I trust is from the website legionathletics.com. So we're going to use that. You got to plug in a few numbers such as your height, your weight, and your body fat percentage, also your wrist and ankle circumference. Depending on your skeletal frame, obviously that's going to come into play. Somebody with naturally wider shoulders has more muscle building potential, for example. Now this calculator, like I mentioned, uses wrist and ankle circumferences. I'm going to use my wrist and ankle measurement for this fat-free mass calculator since I don't have Van Damme's wrist or ankle at my disposal, but I bet you it's pretty close measurement. You can tell by looking at pictures of him when he was younger that he naturally has a thinner frame, just like I myself did back in the day. Definitely more of an ectomesomorph body type. Alright, so my wrist is 6 3/4 inches and ankle is 9. So plugging that in, 6.75 on the wrist and 9 on the ankle, we get two different numbers. We get realistic drug-free total body weight and maximum drug-free total body weight. Van Damme in Bloodsport falls right in the middle. The realistic body weight would be 181.10 and the maximum would be 190.64. Okay, so to answer the first question, is his body in Bloodsport actually achievable naturally? And the answer is yes. But it's beyond realistic. It actually resides between realistic and maximum. And I'm not surprised that it would measure beyond realistic, yet still below the maximum. I mean, look at his karate skills, for example. They're beyond beyond what is realistic for most people to achieve by taking karate classes. That's just a fact, and that's also partly why he's famous. He's just at a much higher skill level than most people could realistically get to. So how do we tie that fact into his bodybuilding? Well, he's obviously the type that goes above and beyond, the type that would consistently put in the hard work, so there's no reason why he couldn't expect greater results in bodybuilding than the average guy, just like he achieved in karate. That same website actually has some key takeaways. For example, it states, it takes at least 4 to 5 years of proper dieting and training to achieve your genetic potential for whole body muscularity. By the time Bloodsport came out, Van Damme would have already been lifting weights for a good 12 years. He actually did a bodybuilding competition in 1978 though, when he would have only been 18 years old, and he's already got really solid development by that time after roughly 4 years of lifting, and I have no doubt that he could have built that body naturally. My personal experience, having started at 14 myself, I made some really noticeable gains in 2 years, getting up to 180 pounds, and a good amount in the third, so I was breaking 200 pounds by the time I was 17. So I personally think if you're doing it right, you can probably get the bulk of your size in 3 years, even though that website claims 4 to 5, but that's literally knowing what you're doing and not skipping workouts and also eating properly. When I started, I was lucky because my brother had already been lifting for years, so I came in with his help and had a proper routine from the onset. I didn't waste the first 6 months or a year trying to learn from scratch. So going back to Van Damme's development at 18, having put say 4 years of training in, yeah, I don't doubt that he could have did that naturally. You already see good development in this picture of him, which I'd guess maybe he's 16 or so he was well on his way. Here's a pic of me at 20, for example, and this is a size I would have had at 18 as well, but I was going through more of my fat buff phase and ballooned up to 245 pounds when I was 17, 18, obviously lacking definition. But these are pictures after cutting back down to around 200, so if I lost 15 on this or even 20, I would have looked pretty similar to what Van Damme did at his bodybuilding show. So I know firsthand it can be done naturally in that amount of time at that age, which is why I don't doubt he could have done it. Here's another reason that lends credibility as to why he could have been natural during that bodybuilding show. By the way, don't worry, I'm also going to play devil's advocate and give you some reasons as to why he may not have been natural. But as far as his bodybuilding show goes, and in that era, 1978, we need to keep this in mind. In the book, My Brother Jean-Claude, that his sister wrote, she said his brother had opened a gym in Belgium and named it California Gym. This was when he was 18. In it, Van Damme was giving karate, bodybuilding, and aerobic classes there, and in his spare time he worked out like crazy on his own. He wanted to show his customers that his gym and his workouts made it possible to gain mass and muscle. He wanted to be the showcase of the gym. He had built his body weight to around 99 kilograms, that'd be 218 pounds. Obviously, he wasn't 218 in that bodybuilding show, and I'm sure at 218 he lacked good definition, but he probably still looked pretty good. But that tells me he was definitely in somewhat of a bulking stage, which I've done, though I took it overboard, like I said, to 245. My brother's done the bulking stage as well. He took it up to 210 pounds, and he didn't look bad. So, being that young, obviously eating in excess to build size,
I just want to eat.
and being that passionate, basically his life revolved around the gym. You really need a certain level of obsession when it comes to this stuff, and it's not even really a workout, it's more of a training session. The distinction being is that you're there with a specific goal and purpose in mind, and you're looking to build off that with future training sessions. It's not like you're going there, you're gonna sweat and just simply work out. It takes a lot more than that, a real plan. And going back to the obsession, you should literally be pissed off if you miss a training session. Okay, so another reason why he may have been natural is the consistency in his body size. He's never really had extreme swings in his physique. He was already well developed at 18 in that bodybuilding show, still looking good at around 24, No Retreat, No Surrender. A few years later in Bloodsport, looking great. Then throughout the early 90s with Universal Soldier and Hard Target, still very admirable body. Going into his mid-30s with Street Fighter, looked amazing. In the later 90s when he was 35 to 40, I thought he still looked really good in Knockoff. Still looking the same size, really great years later in Legionnaire as well. Jumping forward, check out this comparison pic of him at 55 years old compared to his Street Fighter body roughly 20 years younger. Looking further though, there's definitely some differences you can see in his physique. For example, in this picture, which I think is by far one of his best, he looks really solid and lean. He's probably early 20s here, and the reason why I think he looks more impressive in this pic than some later pics is that his life essentially revolved around training, being able to consistently work out for hours at a time, eating all the foods he needed because he essentially is at home and not doing press tours or shooting a movie for months on end. He still obviously looked good in all of his movies, but you gotta figure he was so busy doing all the press, shooting the movies, and even partying that he would have been more in physique maintenance mode with some degradation, which is normal. This pic here, in my opinion, represents his prime as far as physique goes and having ideal training circumstances, which is what he would have had in order to build his physique in the first place, which is also what I was luckily able to have as well while my focus growing up was strictly the gym and martial arts outside of school, that was a life for years. It's obviously a lot harder when you're older and have more responsibilities, depending on your job or career and family obligations, but that's no excuse for anybody, by the way. If you want to get in better shape, take a page out of Nike's book and just do it. Now, judging his physique throughout the years, there's only one thing I see that could be suspect to as why he may not have been natural this whole time. Some people have noticed and pointed out various instances where he might have had gyno. Gynecomastia, by the way, is an enlargement or swelling of breast tissue, most commonly caused by male estrogen levels that are too high or out of balance with testosterone levels. Sometimes it's just genetic and guys will get it.
Let me change my shirt.
Oh. Tell him, Prim. He had breasts.
It's also been linked to certain health conditions such as hyperthyroidism, kidney failure, and even liver failure. Malnutrition can cause it. There's even evidence that smoking a certain plant may cause it, as well as it's been linked to increased estrogen production in men, as well as a decrease in testosterone production. If you're a conspiracy theorist, you'd probably find a link between feminists and the legalization of that plant so as to demasculinize society. But gyno is also one of the known side effects of steroid use though, which is why I brought it up in this video. But the real question is, did Van Damme ever have gyno in the first place? One of the more possible glaring examples I've seen and noticed that people point out is from the film Cyborg, specifically when he's hanging from the ship's mast. And I can see why people may think that. The nipples definitely look a little swollen, but they may just be naturally puffy, partly due to the conditions of the scene. For example, you could tell it's pretty hot out there. People's nipples do change. For example, they usually appear smaller and tighter when you're cold, and then more puffy or kind of taking on a bloated look when you're warm and sweating, or if you're just bloated in general from something you may have eaten, for example. But in this other scene of him on the beach at night, which would have been much cooler, especially after having been in the water, they do look noticeably less swollen. You can find other pictures of him where you may question whether he has gyno or not. For example, in this picture here when he's pretty young, but contrast that with this picture from Bloodsport here where you don't see it. Overall, I'm not actually convinced he ever had gyno. I've noticed under different conditions, body temp wise, bloat wise from diet, etc., that mine will fluctuate here and there and take on a different appearance. Mine have never quite looked like his in Cyborg, but I've also never spent time hanging from a ship's mast in what I would imagine would have been extreme heat. But I'm pretty sure you guys have probably noticed similar changes and fluctuations with that on your own bodies. That is, if you pay attention to such things. I mean, some people have absolutely no idea what's going on with their bodies. I'm sure you've all heard stories of those women who just ended up giving birth who didn't even know they were pregnant. Another reason why he may not have been natural, Van Damme was married to a professional bodybuilder, Gladys Portuguese, in 1987, so that fact alone could sway someone into thinking that maybe Van Damme wasn't natural in sort of a guilty by association sort of way. No, I'm not saying Gladys Portuguese was on any PEDs, and female bodybuilders at the time were significantly smaller than they are nowadays. In fact, Gladys was one of the smallest, competed under 120 pounds at 5'4" to 5'5", and has more of a bikini model body. But she was a top competitor in 2 Miss Olympia competitions, and professional bodybuilding more or less unfortunately goes hand in hand with drug use. If you're competing at an elite level with others who are taking stuff, it's a safe bet you're likely using the same compounds that other people are as well. It's possible maybe she was just on various fat burners and diuretics though, and not steroids. She doesn't have any of the signs really like a deeper voice that women tend to develop.
The longer you train, the more you get to know your body and the more you start appreciating yourself. And you feel, you feel a lot sexier and nicer and yeah.
But tying her back in with Van Damme, I believe she last competed in 1985, so she wasn't competing in bodybuilding when they were together, but she obviously remained in very good shape as the two did happen to meet on a fitness photo shoot. I mentioned No Plates No Dates video on Van Damme earlier. Now the interesting thing is that although More Plates More Dates believes someone could get Van Damme's results naturally, he doesn't necessarily think Van Damme himself did, based on the logic that in that era, since he would have been competing with Arnold and Stallone in action roles and being a prominent actor himself in a role where he's representing the cream of the crop essentially as far as men's physiques go, then it makes sense for him to also use what others have in that era. My logic is that since Van Damme was able to achieve what he did as far as karate skills and ballet goes, and also becoming a world-famous action star, it seems likely that he could have been one of the few to achieve and maintain that type of body naturally. I mean, he's definitely the type that is able to get what most people can't.
First, he demolished the supreme player in the most brutal sport in the world. Then, he crushed the competition in a contest nobody plays for kicks.
He's certainly a high achiever. But here's what More Plates More Dates thinks he used in order to achieve it.
Probably kept his, maybe used a testosterone base and kept it light, but I assume he probably used stuff like Primo pretty heavily, things like Winstrol, maybe things like Anavar. Those were probably the choice compounds.
There's of course speculation across various websites out there as well. For example, here's what evolutionary.org says. It's rumored and openly discussed by bodybuilders and actors that Jean-Claude Van Damme used a heavy cocktail of steroids to stay in shape. His steroid cycle was geared towards being lean and looking good, so he never used Decadorblin or Sustanin. However, he likely used combinations of Anavar, Winstrol, and maybe Clenbuterol at that point. The article goes on to say he never used HGH because he's never shown the side effects of HGH abuse, big gut, jaw growth, etc. Jean-Claude was likely just using steroids to recover better and keep his muscle base. Contrast that with what muscleandbrawn.com says, which looked for signs of steroid use. That site didn't find any evidence of gyno, flushed skin, or bloating. It also addressed the consistency in his size, which I've mentioned. The site also stated that he has amazing genetics, which is why he got so jacked as a teen. So my verdict, based on all the evidence, only possible sign of usage was in questionable gyno, but the results he achieved between realistically natural and maximum natural, which I attribute to his obsession and dedication while running that gym in Belgium, his consistent body size throughout not only the years but decades, and one other thing I haven't mentioned just yet. In a 2016 interview with /film.com, Frank Duke stated that Van Damme was pure. He didn't do drugs, he was totally against any kind of steroids, he took pride in the fact that he was all natural. This was during the time of Bloodsport, by the way. Frank Dukes and Van Damme, of course, had a falling out years after Bloodsport came out, and he even sued Van Damme over the film The Quest. So even though Frank Dukes may not necessarily have the best track record of telling truths, if anything, I think he'd take the opportunity to badmouth Van Damme during that interview. Speaking of which, he claimed Van Damme couldn't even do a forward roll when they met and ended up landing on his head while trying to perform one in front of his students, but by the time he got done training Van Damme in preparation for Bloodsport, which was a 3-month period, Van Damme was doing front flips. But to summarize, I'm going to say Van Damme was all natural. This is speculation on my part. Regardless, he is and will always be an inspiration and a legend. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. I'll do a future video, by the way, straight talk on what it actually takes to get considerable results as a natty, and while I believe most people can, I'm going to tell you why they won't. So stay tuned for that. Here's just a preview of my consistency over decades at around 20, 32, and even 40 years old. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.